Yeah, I just started. Sorry.
Oh, that's nice.
Hey. I wasn't sure. Jabbing you. No, you're fine. You're fine. There's no good place to put this. I wonder if I should try it over there. Maybe I will.
Hi, Kelly. Wait for your name.
It's no better. She's a
I think so. That's what I signed for game. He was so good though. I was with him when we did it first. Yeah. So if I needed to sign, I'll be like, it's not wonderful. I don't know, but he was such a gentleman. He's a really good person. He is good for great. I'm like, hey, now I'm like, less than 6 months, but you can do it. We're almost there. We're down to the do it real fast. Holy cow, this is
good times, right?
on the floor. Nobody puts baby in the corner. I'm so here. We're coming in. Let them have a seat.
Yeah. Good. Excellent.
You're going to warm up real quick. We're out and getting And you know, you start all these people talking. There's people I've seen in a while.
You're not the other one. How's that?
Sit down here, right here.
We'll call this meeting to order. This is December 7th, 2000 organization meeting. We have 3 members that are holdover members from the prior board. That's Marcy, Lonnie, and Mickey. Those are the, yes, I know. We're just establishing who's present for the meeting for the minutes. We have those 3 members. There was no executive session before today's meeting. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we're going to do a roll call of those 3 members. Everybody ready? Let's rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Madam Secretary, can I have a roll call, please, of the holdover candidates?
Mrs. Van Meter.
Here.
Mr. Wickham.
Here.
Mr. Barlow.
Here.
Thank you. We established under the school code that we needed a majority of the holdover candidates to read 3 are present. So we have the role of the board, the 3 members, is to nominate a temporary president. The temporary president is the person who sort of runs the meeting from here on out until a president is elected. Out of the 3 members that are present, is there a motion to nominate a temporary president to run the meeting?
I'll nominate Ricky Barlow.
Are there any other nominations? Can I have a motion to close nominations?
Please.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor of just closing nominations, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. At this time, before we open this up for an official vote on temporary president and on any other official elections for officers tonight, I'd like it to open it up for public comment. I see that we have a sign-in sheet with several individuals listed here. We will have another opportunity for public comment in the main agenda meeting, but if any of you listed here or in the audience wish to make public comment prior to the election of the temporary president, the president, or the vice president, please stand and I will take your comment. Wow, are you sure? Okay. Hearing that there is no public comment on any officers or any portion of the reorganization, do I have a motion for acceptance of the nomination of Mickey Barlow for temporary president? May I have a motion?
Yes.
And a second?
Yeah.
Is there any discussion on Mr. Barlow as the temporary president to run the rest of this meeting? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, Mr. Barlow, you can take over the meeting.
At this time, we're going to do the swearing in of new board members and re-elected board members. So if we all stand and you can repeat after me. Okay. Carolyn, can you please read the election results? Sit down.
The certificate of election.
There we go.
Does anyone? If someone could just announce the individuals who were elected to office, that is the next one. Great.
Mr. Murray, Mrs. Paquette, Mr. Stroller, Mrs. Mays, Mrs. Meixel, and Mrs. Katie.
Okay. Now let's stand.
And Pam Microsoft, we all stand, please. Please repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth.
Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth.
And I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
You can sit, and as you're sitting, we're going to go around the room and have you state your name so that we know who took the oath. We'll start here at the end with Ms. Meixel.
Pam Meixel.
Becky Paquette.
Greg Murray.
Melissa Katie.
Kevin Bailey.
Ian Stroller.
Here we are. Okay. Because the temporary president is authorized to provide the oath, and we know those who were elected to the positions, those board members are now deemed seated, and we have a full board for election of officers. The next step is here.
Okay. At this time, we're going to open the floor for nominations for board president. Do we have any nominations for board president?
I would like to nominate Pam myself.
Any others for board president? I'm going to nominate Ronald Wickham for board president. Any others would like to be considered for nomination for board president?
Motion to close nominations.
Motion to close the nomination. Have a second? Any discussion on that?
If I may, I just want to kind of provide a quick disclaimer, because before you cast your vote, I want to say that my time is extremely limited. And if you guys do elect me to that position, I'll do the best I can, do that job to the best of my ability. But I will, in turn right around and ask more of you guys. There's a lot we have to accomplish, and I won't be able to do it by myself. There's already a number of committees, we probably need some more. And I'm going to ask each of you to participate in those committees if we choose to do committees, or if they're work groups. I think what I'm saying is I'm going to ask more of you guys if you would like to use your president. Pam has done it before. She's done a fine job and has more time than I do.
And that's his disclaimer.
Any other discussion before we close?
Motion to close nominations. All in favor?
All in favor of closing nominations? Opposed?
Now this time, what we traditionally do, you can do it one of two ways. You can vote on the first person nominated the whole way through and then vote on the second, or you can have each individual board member just state who they are voting for the presidency. So it's really up to you all. I probably recommend the latter because there's only 2 candidates, if you're comfortable with that. Okay. Hearing that there are 2 candidates for the position of president, I would ask the board secretary to call the roll and that each individual board member indicate who they wish to serve as president.
Mr. Barlow,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
I'll vote for Pam.
Mrs. Paquette,
Lonnie?
Mr. Wickham,
Ms. Michael.
Mr. Stroller,
Ms. Mike's up.
Mrs. Mays,
I'll go with this.
Mrs. Mikesell,
I'll vote for myself.
Mrs. Van Meter,
Ms. Michael.
and Mrs. Cavey.
We have a new president.
Nice job, Coach.
You should take your time. You're now a backbencher. Thank you for your service. At this time, now that we have a president, they take over for the temporary president, and we move on to elections for the vice president position, once Ms. Mikesville is seated.
Oh, I take over.
Yep, you're taking over.
Oh, all right. All right, we need nominations for vice president. And that person has to take over the meetings when I'm not here. Any other nominations?
I didn't hear the nomination.
Lonnie? Any other nominations? I have a motion to close. All in favor? Any opposed to closing?
No. Now we need an official motion to move Lottie as position of vice president. Can we have a motion and a second on that?
I make a motion to accept her as president. Vice president.
Discussion?
We have a second.
Yes.
Yeah.
Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Barlow,
Yes.
Mr. Murray,
Yes.
Mrs. Paquette,
Yes.
Mr. Wickham,
Yes.
Mr. Stroller,
Yes.
Mrs. Mays, Mrs. Mikesell,
Yes.
Mrs. Van Meter,
Yes.
Mrs. Cavey.
Now, we need to appoint somebody to be the legislative chairperson for PSBA. This isn't a lot of work, but you get the information from PSBA and you become the person that we're going to look to keep on top of what's going on. For instance, we have no budget in the state right now and what is going on. And so this would be the person that kind of share where we are with that, or things on that. So this is just an appointment. Would someone love to do this? That's very interested in legislative. What's going on? Becky, thank you. Okay, we're quite. It was close, Greg, because I was looking at you next.
I would have, but.
Yeah, Becky did slightly raise her hand. Thanks, Becky.
Yeah, I was going to put a finger on my nose.
Now, if you look on your second sheet, you have the dates and the times.
We have to, sorry, Pam, we just need to make one change to the date, which is the December meeting. We did not get the first, it actually needs to be December the 5th.
If If we operate as a board of committees, which is what we have been doing these last 2 years, that's the top part. I mean, the bottom part, I'm sorry. And so these are the board meetings, and then if you chair a committee, then you would set up when your committees would meet. We operate as a board for years, up till 2 years ago, then it would be the top part.
We just,
Karen feels
go
that,
ahead, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt, go ahead.
Karen feels that to operate as a board of the whole, that we should do it as other districts do it, where the first meeting of the month is a work session. No votes are taken at that time. No public comment is done at
Correct,
that
it's
time.
strictly the public can come and they just
And
watch you work.
And then the second meeting of the month would be the actual meeting where the votes would take place and public comment would be done. If you'll notice, some meetings, there's only going to be one meeting in like February 8th, if this is calendar that we vote on. We would have the work session at 6 and the regular public meeting at 7 o'clock. Okay? Discussion, how do you want to operate as a board?
I prefer to go back. I'm not interested in going back to committee meetings. I'm just meeting an hour early on.
Several times.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
need to. Or come and, just have that work session. I'm okay with that too. Instead of going to the I think then you all work it out. Everybody knows what everybody's saying. All board members participate. I think you have committees that makes it tough. It's a lot of extra time. So, it's a lot of time anyhow, but I think when you have to get a separate committee, it's a lot of work.
Brooke, can I ask you to, you do a lot of this, and you see
Yeah,
these things
yeah.
work both ways. Could you kind of articulate the advantages of each?
So I'm partial to a committee of the whole because committees, when they're operating as separate subparts, particularly in a district of this size, can become really easily swinging to sort of the micromanaging like employees in the school district as opposed to holding the superintendent accountable for what the responsibilities of the school are. So in a very large district, sometimes committees work well because they sort of serve to facilitate a lot of larger conversations that come to the board then for strategic planning. But in a school district of this size, and actually the school districts of most of Adams and York County, they operate as committee of the whole, and they try to do most of their work in 1 or 2 working sessions a month. And that is when the deliberation takes place among the board. That is the time where information is presented, questions were asked in advance, and there's just a lot of sort of unlimited time for board debate on issues. And there's one time that the administration has to prepare instead of multiple committee times. In a larger district, 10 to 15 senior administrators, the committee structure might work better because the curriculum person goes to the curriculum meeting and the director of building and grounds goes to the building and grounds meeting, and they're dealing with thousands of students. So there are benefits when you're of that size. When it's smaller like this, I think you set your agenda out in front. You make sure your administrators are prepared to come to the committee the whole session with the information you, the board, need. And then there's lots of unlimited time where there's no vote at the end of it to discuss. And the superintendent has plenty of notice about what might go on the agenda, has plenty of notice where there might be problems, where there might be contention, where another meeting might be necessary, and it provides for longer term planning. I've experienced both things. I think here in the district, at one point you met before board meetings. There are limitations to that. If you set yourself to an hour, that can be good and bad. It forces you to really narrow your discussion. But there are some issues that require more than 2 hours twice, or 1 or 2 hours twice a month. So if I were to advise, I would say, based on how this board has operated in the last 6 years, committee of the whole in one working meeting seems to be the way you can be most productive. And I guess in closing, I would also say, looking at your agendas, split between 2 meetings a month, they both seem relatively light. As a whole, I could see a very complete agenda, but for now, it seems like bill payments and hires, if they were planned a little bit earlier and discussed and deliberated earlier, we wouldn't require the 2 meetings a month to make sure we have appropriate votes. And it would give your superintendent sort of leeway. If another meeting was necessary, she could advertise that meeting, we could hold a special meeting, and we could take care of a vote that may not need to wait until the next month. So I think those are some of the pros and cons. I think the goal is that there's plenty of time for conversation before you come to an action meeting. And at the action meeting, you're really ready to take action, not to sit there and debate a whole new set of facts, unless, of course, you have a whole new set of facts. Does that make sense?
However, this year, we will be going into negotiations for teacher contract, and that does take a committee
Mhm.
that we will have to set up.
And that's definitely advisable.
There might be some other issues that would require a committee to delve into those issues more deeply. I kind of see committees as a way of divvying up the work, and I see a lot of work ahead of us. So I don't see committees as a bad idea.
Yeah, there's no reason that if it says a committee as a whole to say, hey, can you research this for the next meeting? Like I can, as a topic, you don't necessarily run the committee, but
It's kind of the same thing. The people that are interested in that subject are going to do the work.
Yeah.
So we say, Ian, you take and run with this, and you would, and you would deal whether it was your committee or whether it was your work group.
It seems to me that there are advantages to both, but the committee as a whole, and the draw to me is that there would be a lot more, I think, transparency with the public. They'd be able to be here at a time when, they usually be 4 o'clock in the afternoon sometimes on a committee. It's not easy for most people to get to. But 7 o'clock on Mondays, twice a month.
Or planned, because sometimes the committee meetings are kind of called last minute. So
Or even, I think a lot of people in public are kind enough to videotape these meetings where if they're not always able to do that at the committee meetings. It seems to me that if we're all working together here in one room in front of the public, it's a lot better for transparency.
Another thing to think about is if many of you feel like you would attend all of the committee meetings anyway, because that's the sort of involvement you want, then a committee as a whole might make the most sense. If you're all going to be at the same series of meetings routinely, or if you think that board members will get to a regular voting meeting and having not attended the committee meeting will want a whole bunch of information to get up to speed, and that takes time to re-review. So it can be an efficiency thing as well.
There was little or no attendance at the committee meetings that we had. The people who wanted the committee also did not show up at the meetings. So we had committee members that didn't show up to committee meetings. So they were not productive.
Might be another reason why maybe the whole would work.
and actually, you were on every committee, so
And she was there.
she was there.
Because she's reporting.
And is there anything that says that we can't, if we do a committee as a whole, when we decide that this really deserves a committee because it needs extra work, we can't
Sure.
create one at that point in time?
Sure.
Absolutely. It's common to do it now because you should try to, work at it for a number of months until you decide it doesn't work. But yes, absolutely.
Well, before we decide, we currently have 4 operating committees. We have property, finance, education, and policy. And I would propose that we add a couple more. I'd like to see us work on, if not a committee, a working group on school safety. Another working group or committee on long-term strategic planning, and another committee to look at the feasibility of an education foundation. So those are things that we could do in a working group together, or we could do those.
And Lonnie, maybe to understand, what would happen would be like, the agenda would say policy. So any policies that needed to be reviewed would be part of that agenda. These all would become agenda items
Every meeting.
for the work, for every meeting. And some of them we would say, we have no policies at this time to review, or, the safety committee, this is where we are with the safety committee, and we would continue that, but they would be standing parts of the agenda for the work session.
I like an education foundation already, but I think that should also include community.
Agreed, as well as should safety and long-term planning.
So that does bring up another point, which is there are board committees, and you could also, as a district, establish more of a committee that might involve a community member. So something like a foundation might be a district instead of a board committee, and it would be chaired by the superintendent then, involve a board member, and involve members of the public as the superintendent would deem necessary. Something like a foundation, which might be separately incorporated, should probably be separate from the school board, because the school board isn't going to run the foundation. The foundation members are going to run the foundation. So I think some of those special interest group ideas can definitely be facilitated at the community level if there are some really specific projects like you're suggesting. So that would be just up to the board to establish those as necessary.
But not right now, I don't think. It's probably, yeah, well, and we're just getting together here. This is just a new group of people too, that I think we need to kind of give time.
Do you have a position?
I would recommend having been through both groups, that the committee of the whole, because I agree with Kelly, that it would help with the transparency, the discussions would be in public. As much, I mean, where we can, I mean, personnel we can't discuss in public, but otherwise, I mean, the majority of it would be in public. I see you have strategic plan there. The comprehensive plan we'll have community members on it anyhow, and there will be constant reports to the board on the progress of the comprehensive plan. Some of you will be on that committee, we hope.
I should add this, although it's the opposite of self-serving. One of the benefits of doing a committee of the whole is that you only have one voting meeting a month, which means you technically only need a solicitor for that one voting meeting, should you choose. It would allow for you to say, hey, we have a tricky issue, we want Brooke or Lee or somebody else from soccer leader to be at that other meeting, but for now, we've been covering 2 meetings a month, so there would be some savings there on the part of the district. I see people with the dollar signs in their eyes, so trying to add everything in there.
Well, however, we didn't always have a solicitor
No, it's
at even our voting meetings, so I mean.
in the discretion of the board, as I said, absolutely.
Well, why don't we start here? Let's do some kind of a vote here on committee of the whole, because I'm getting a sense more people are for that. How many would prefer to be operating as a committee of the whole?
Just raise your hand.
Just, yeah.
I get it.
Did you raise yours? Nikki?
Yes, right.
It's okay. Okay. That's
You need a formal vote on that, as a change of the policy.
just how many in favor or how many in
You need
opposed?
a motion and second, discussion, and then I'll vote.
We make a motion to run the school board as a whole instead of a committee.
I second it.
All in favor? Or do I need a roll call?
We should roll call.
Mr. Barlow.
Yes.
Mr. Murray.
Yes.
Mrs. Paquette.
Yes.
Mr. Wickham.
Yes.
Mr. Strawler.
Yes.
Mrs. Mays.
Yes.
Mrs. Meixel.
Yes.
Mrs. Van Meter.
Yes.
Mrs. Cavey.
So the top part of that is how we will establish meeting dates, times, and places for regular board meetings for the ensuing year. Okay. We need a motion then for the top part, the committee of the whole work session and regular public meeting.
And this is what we do.
Okay, second? Roll call?
Mr. Barlow.
Yes.
Mr. Murray.
Yes.
Mrs. Paquette.
Yes.
Mr. Wickham.
Yes.
Mr. Strawler.
Yes.
Mrs. Mays. Mrs. Meixel.
Yes.
Mrs. Van Meter. Mrs. Cavey.
Now, do I need a motion to adjourn this meeting?
It's up to you. I don't know how the board does it. You need a motion to adjourn?
Man.
You can roll right into the next one as far as I'm
All
concerned.
right, well then, let's just move right on. Then we don't need to do another pledge.
I don't think that you
Good, thank you. Okay, I need a motion to approve the minutes of the November 9th board meeting. Marcy made the motion.
Yes.
Motion, I need a second.
We should have a roll call.
Well, you know, we'll have a roll call first.
The minutes.
I'll get
roll
this
call
already.
for this portion of the meeting with all new members in it?
Yeah.
Of their attendance?
Oh,
We need to take attendance for this portion of the meeting, the new board members.
Mr. Barlow?
Here.
Mr. Murray?
Here.
Mrs. Paquette?
Still
Mr.
here.
Wickham? Mr. Stroller?
Here.
Mrs. Mays?
Here.
Mrs. Meixel?
Here.
Mrs. Van Meter?
Here.
Mrs. Cavey?
Yeah.
Motion to approve the minutes of November 9th meeting from Marcy. Do I have a second?
Becky.
Becky, thank you. All in favor? Any opposed to those minutes? I guess we're doing this audit
We are doing the
This time?
present, yes,
because
because
it's not on here.
that's correct.
Okay.
So there will be, the auditor will be presenting his findings. Can you see that?
And for those of you who don't know, this is Mr. Kevin Stouffer from Smith Elliott and currently performs our local audit to report on the results of the 14-15 fiscal year.
Caroline asked me to keep my comments under 3 hours tonight. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible, but my name again is Kevin Stouffer. I'm a manager with Smith Elliott Company. We performed the audit of the Fairfield Area School District this year. So what we have here this evening, this is just a summarized PowerPoint presentation of 3 different documents that each of the board members were given this evening. It's the annual financial report of the financial statements themselves, what's known as the management letter, and the required communications from the discharge recovery. So the 3 documents you have in front of you tonight, again, is all summarized here in a high-level summary presentation. So before we dive into the details, this year we did have unmodified audit opinions, which is the best opinions that we can give on the financial statements, and I'll come back to that shortly. Overall, happy to report that we didn't have any findings related to our audit. So overall, I think, again, some positive results there. The general fund did have an increase in the fund balance this year. We'll get to, again, those details shortly. The key change in this year's financial statements, especially if you compare it to last year, there was the implementation of pension standards, what's known as GASB 68, that basically record the underfunded portion of the pension plan with PCERS this year. So it has significant impact on the financial statements and the numbers that are being presented. But again, we'll get to those details shortly. So diving into the details now, again, the independent auditors report is where we, as your independent auditors, issue our opinion on your financial statements. And again, this year we were able to issue the unmodified audit opinion, which is the best opinion that we can give on the financial statements. What exactly does that mean? It sounds odd. Unmodified audit opinion basically means that there were no modifications necessary to the report, that the financial statements can be relied upon by an outside party. It is not an opinion on internal controls, nor is it an opinion on results of a fraud investigation. Sometimes people hear the word audit, they think it's all encompassing. Again, our procedures are designed to make sure that the numbers are materially correct, and that's what our opinion expresses. Also included in the financial statements is what's known as management's discussion analysis, or the MD&A. This is internally prepared by management, but does offer comparative analysis of those numbers. Most of the financial statements only show a single year's worth of information, but the MD&A is comparative. It does offer that analysis. So just looking at a couple of the fluctuations, starting with the governmental activities, the statement's a little bit different than what you're used to seeing as far as internal records are concerned. This is under the full accrual basis of accounting. So the big changes here combines the general fund and the capital reserve fund into one column, what's known as the governmental activities. It also records capital assets and long-term debt. So in your general fund, what you're used to seeing, those items of capital assets are not recorded, and the long-term debt is just revenue and expense. It's not recorded as a liability, but that is recorded here under the full accrual basis of account. So just a couple fluctuations from last year to this year, starting with the non-current assets, mostly again capital assets. That is recorded at historical cost and just depreciated over time. You see a slight decrease of about $700,000. That just means that your depreciation expense this year exceeded your purchases. So it's nothing alarming. Again, everything is recorded at historical cost. Just didn't have as many purchases this year, and depreciation expense exceeded those purchases. The key change is under the deferred outflows of resources, the non-current liabilities, and the deferred inflows of resources. And that again is the pension standards. I'll refer to it as GASB 68. That's basically the underfunded portion of the PSERS plan. And this affects all school districts within Pennsylvania and most governmental entities in the United States that have a defined benefit plan. But it affects the PSERS plan a little bit more just because the plan is so far underfunded. Just for context, the PSERS plan itself is currently underfunded by about $40 billion with a B, $40 billion. So each of the entities that are part of that, you're now recording that liability on your financial statements. Previously, that liability existed, but it just wasn't being reported in the financial statement. So again, that liability was always there. It's just now required to be included in the financial statements themselves. So you can see the key highlight here is the net position. At the very bottom line, you can see last year was a negative $3.2 million. Again, the impact of GASB 68 basically recording a liability of over $20 million to further reduce that net position to a negative $22.5 million. So that's the key impact to the financial statements under GASB 68. Moving to, again, what you're more used to seeing is just the overall general fund analysis. A couple columns here, starting with the original budget for 2014-15, comparing that to the actual results, and then offering a variance from the original budget to the actual results. So overall, you can see the local revenues, which primarily consist of the taxes, were considerably higher than the original budget. Again, it is a little bit less than last year. The taxes were mainly because last year you had a one-time earned income tax. That was a one-time income for the school district. As far as the expenditures are concerned, you can see pretty much right in line with budget, but did have increases under the instruction and support services category in comparison to the previous year, mostly because of the PSERS rate. So earlier when I was talking about GASB 68, that's reporting a liability for the underfunded portion. Here what you're seeing is the actual funding of the plan, which the rate that's being contributed to PSERS has increased over the past several years and will continue to increase in 15-16 and going forward. Other than that, most of the expenditures were fairly consistent with the previous year. I will highlight that it was unbudgeted under the debt service, and then underneath the expenditures, proceeds for long-term financing and payment to refund long-term debt. That's the net transaction of the refinancing that occurred. We did issue the series of 2015, basically to refinance the series of 2010A, so that has a financial impact included in the actual results. That was not budgeted. Finally, I just wanted to highlight the interfund transfers. The bottom item, $651,000 that was transferred out. The majority of about $497,000 went to the capital reserve fund, while the remaining $153,000 went to the food service fund. So in total, when you take the revenues plus the expenditures, plus or minus the other financing sources and uses, again, the general fund did have a surplus this year of about $360,000. Moving to the capital reserve fund, again, just to show 3 years worth of information here. Starting with fund additions, mainly just the interest income for the year, very minimal. Expenditures this year, about $356,000, mainly the roof replacement project that occurred this year. And then here's where you see the offset of that transfer coming in from the general fund. So overall, the ending fund balance at the end of the year, right around $230,000 in the capital reserve fund. Again, primarily consistent of transfers that have not yet been spent from the general fund. Moving over to the food service fund, and I will highlight that I didn't include a balance sheet here, but similarly under the GASB 68 reporting of that liability, because the food service fund is under the full accrual basis of accounting, the food service fund also has to show a portion of that net pension liability. So when you look at the balance sheet of the food service fund, again, it did have a negative impact to report that liability in the food service fund, where that's not reported in the general fund. So just a couple of highlights. Overall, the operating revenue, a slight decrease, and that's your actual charges for service or your charges for the meals, slight decrease compared to last year. Federal and state subsidies did increase about $20,000. That's just more free and reduced meals. That's obviously very consistent with most of our schools. We're seeing that with the economy. Again, more reimbursements coming in for free and reduced meals. And then again, here was the remaining offset for the transfers in of about $153,000 from the general fund. As far as the expenses are concerned, you see a slight increase in the expenses, but the majority of that comes from the salaries and benefits category. Overall, the PSERS expense did increase about $16,000 compared to last year. About $5,500 of that was just because the PSERS rate increased. The other $11,000, again, with implementing GASB 68, there was additional expense to be recorded with that. So because of that, overall, the expenses associated with PSERS increased about $16,000. So overall change in net position, $153,941. But if you back out the transfer you get, you can see just about a break even with the increases in the PSERS rates. So overall, I think very commendable as far as the food service fund is concerned. Next, we just moved to some graphical analysis just to highlight some of the trends that you can see over time, starting with the cash and investment comparison. Overall, you can see the general fund cash increase from about $1.6 million in 2013, again, up to about $3.5 million at the end of 2015. Again, the capital reserve fund kind of depends on transfers coming in and when those monies are spent, fluctuates a little bit, and then again, also the cafeteria fund. The next slide just shows the taxes over the past 3 years. Again, you can see 2014 kind of being the spike because of that one-time earned income tax that did come in, kind of back down to a quote-unquote normal level as far as the taxes are concerned. It looks like a positive note with the state sources, how that's incrementally increased there. But that is basically an offset to the PSERS that we were talking about earlier. Currently, the state funds reimburses half of the PSERS contributions. So because of that, as the contribution rate is increased, so is the reimbursement from the state as they're funding half of that. So that's why you see the overall increase in the state sources over the past couple of years. A lot of times we just get asked the question, how do we compare to other school districts? So in order to offer that comparison, this data is a year behind. This is 13-14. We just compared it to the revenue streams compared to school districts in the LIU. Just to give you an overall comparison. And you can see as far as the revenue streams are concerned, very consistent with the schools in the LIU. Moving to the expenditure side of things, again, looking at the functions, you can see some slight increases overall in the instruction and the support services, again, mostly because of the PSERS increase, and that's highlighted further on the next slide. You can see the salaries, again, very consistent over the past 3 years, but the next column over are the benefits. Again, that PSERS rate is increased. Obviously, that's the increase in the benefits during that time period. All the others fairly consistent across the board. The next slide just offers an expenditure breakdown, again, looking at those same objects. You can see that in comparison to LIU schools. Overall, very consistent. I will highlight the top two there, the debt interest and other, and the debt principal transfers, considerably less than the LIU schools, especially the debt principal portion. So overall, again, I think a positive note then when comparing the total expenditures. The last graph that we have is just an expenditures per average daily membership. This again, Fairfield a little bit higher than the LIU schools. I think the key point there is being a smaller school district. You have so many fixed costs and obviously less students. So because of that, that looks a little bit higher. But again, in comparison to all Pennsylvania school districts, again, considerably less. So just a couple of the other highlights that are included in the financial statements. Note number 9 is all related to long-term debt. This includes the outstanding balance at the end of the year of just under $18.9 million. It is a reduction of about $585,000 of principal paid during the year. Again, did have the refinancing that occurred, and it also included are the future debt service payments to be made related to the debt. Again, $18.9 million is total principal outstanding, but obviously cash payments to be made related to the debt, about $5.4 million. So that's included in the financial statements. Note number 10, I know you're tired of hearing me talk about GASB 68, but note number 10 is strictly related to the pension plan itself. It's about 5 pages worth of information in the financial statements that was not previously there. That includes information about the plan, the benefits, the contributions, actuarial assumptions. It's all included there in that plan, as well as a breakdown of the total dollars that are being included there with the reporting of the liability of the net pension liability. Also included, and I just want to highlight this, when we talk about this big number related to GASB 68, this liability is an estimate. It is actuarially determined. It's not exactly how much you're going to pay out in future benefits. So unlike your debt, where here's the $18.9 million, here's the payments we have to make related to that debt, this isn't an estimate. Again, it is actuarially determined. I think the bottom slide really highlights that. Right now, because it was actuarially determined, they use a discount rate or a future interest rate of 7.5%. What's required to be disclosed is if you use 1 percentage point lower and 1 percentage point higher, the impact that has on that liability. So you can see just reducing that down to 6.5% raises the liability to $25.7 million, while increasing it reduces that liability down to $16.3 million. So those actuarial assumptions have a significant impact on that liability that is ultimately reported, and those details are included there in the financial statements. If I can just turn your attention briefly to the management letter. If we would have had any findings to report on related to internal controls, those would be reported here in this letter. Again, happy to report that we didn't have any findings. We do have a couple recommendations for your consideration that we reviewed with management. We'll get to in just a second. and also a summary of new standards that will be affecting the school district. And just to highlight, all the graphs that we went through, they're included in the management letter, not in the actual financial statements themselves. So just a couple recommendations that we had, again, not weren't defining, but just some general recommendations that we reviewed with management. The first one was just related to the support staff agreement. That agreement just did not include the actual payout for personnel leave. So we just recommended to amend that policy to include that payout in the future. A couple minor IT recommendations related to passwords, as well as the removal of a training ID, which is there. And then we have a summary of new standards. The uniform grant guidance is applicable to all federal awards for all entities receiving federal awards. So that'll be effective for awards after December 26, 14. Also makes minor changes to single audits. The school district currently does not perform a single audit because of your federal dollars. The threshold is being increased, so even less likely in the future that school district will need a single audit where we test certain federal programs. And then if you want to read or hear about GASBs, these are the new ones that will be coming into effect in the new year, 72, 74, 75. We've reviewed those with Caroline and with management. We'll work through those in the future, and also with those preliminary reviews on. The final letter that you have is just our required communications letter. Have there been any significant issues in completing the audit or disagreements with management? We'd have to report those in the letter. We're happy to report there were no such issues, so that's why we just consider it our standard communications letter. So again, just in summary, we did have the unmodified audit opinions, which is the best opinion that we can give on the financial statements. General fund did have an increase. Overall, no internal control findings or any findings that we had to report on. And just one last time, GASB 68 was obviously the big change in the financial statements. I know that was a lot of information. I hope it was somewhat fairly quickly. I don't think I'm anybody to sleep, but I certainly wanted to open it up for any questions on anything I covered here or anything that's maybe in the financial statements or the letters that I did not cover. Let's go forward. Well, I appreciate your time here this evening, and I appreciate Caroline and her staff's help in completing the audit. And if any questions come up after this evening, please feel free to get in contact with us or filter those through Caroline. We'll be happy to answer those.
I know we have several brand new people here, and this is quite a bit of information. And I think it would even be helpful to people that have been on the board for years to get this ahead of time and then have you kind of go through so that, because I wouldn't have a question like this, and I'm sure they all are just, and they might go home and look through this and say, oh, we can ask those questions even after.
Yes, we'd be happy to answer those next year. We'll get it to you in advance, and then we'll come to the meeting, and that way you'll have time to digest that.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much.
I know, from the school. We're going to hear from our student representatives. And before we do, I just want to say that Erin, you were terrific in the play, and the play was excellent. So, yeah, that needs to be told to the director and assistant director too. Anyway, do you have anything to share?
Would you like to go first? Actually, there have been a couple of changes to our yearbook committee this year. There's a really cool new option where students of the student body can take pictures with their phones and then send them into an app that they can download to the yearbook to be revised and put in the yearbook. So kind of everyone's taking part in it. Basically. Also, yearbook committee, not yearbook, prom committee met. And we decided on the top couple themes that we wanted and gave the seniors the option to vote on which one they liked the most. And I'm pretty sure Midnight Garden is the theme of this year's prom.
Midnight Garden.
So, like Ms. Michael said, the play actually went really well. None of us were really too sure about it beforehand, but it ended up going pretty smoothly. The spring musical this year will actually be The Little Mermaid Junior. So it's a junior version, which it's not as big, but because of that, they can do more with it, so it'll be bigger. Auditions are December 17th after school. Then This week, on December 10th, the NHS will be hosting a holiday traditions around the world. Kind of like a little festival thing. I believe there will be 8 different stations that middle schoolers are welcome to attend. It's $5 admission. They'll learn about different holiday traditions from all sorts of different countries. I know Mexico, Japan, Holland, Israel, and there are a few others that won't be included. And I believe Ms. Weber said that there have been about 30-something permission slips turned in so far. And all the proceeds will be going to the Dr. Family Hub. And that's all I have today.
Good, thank you. Building celebrations and everything for each other.
Sure.
Good.
Obviously, the sports winter season is actually in full swing at this point with basketball and wrestling. The band concert is tomorrow, the high school, middle school band concert is tomorrow, the 8th. Choral concert is Monday, the 14th. And the high school is also getting ready to, it's December, but we come back from Christmas break or holiday break, and we're getting ready to do finals and Keystone exams right away when we come back. So we're kind of getting ready to transition too. So we're going to throw us that also.
In the middle school, we're all looking forward to holiday traditions around the world. I think that's just a really nice concept. And, to share with the high school students, to share with the middle school students. And I was going to announce our band concert tomorrow night. The middle school, high school do a band concert, then a separate night for the choral concert. And I believe each board member had received an invitation to the band concert.
At the elementary school, our holiday concert will be on Tuesday, December 15th at 6:30 here at the high school, middle school auditorium. And it's going to feature our first and second grade students. And it's a free concert, so please come. I would also like to take this time to acknowledge Sharon Tuckey. She is a second grade teacher in the elementary school. She was the elementary building's outstanding teacher for the Shippensburg Study Council, and she received her award at a luncheon in November. And the high school, did you already do this?
No.
Oh, go ahead.
We're gonna come back to you, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, did you want to?
Yeah, the high school Shippensburg Study Council teacher here was Daniel Harlow.
Two great accomplishments.
Okay, moving to public comment. Sherry Hill.
Mine's just regarding the French trip, and I know it's on because of everything that's happened in France and things on that. And I see it's not for an action, it's just kind of to fill you in. I did copy just to let you know, this is the itinerary of the trip. It is through a tour company. It is not a teacher organized thing. It's through EF Educational Tours. They've been in business for about 50 years. I will say they have people in countries all over. I got an email at 6 a.m. the next morning afterwards that they, you know, if they needed to adjust trips, they do adjust them. And in the past, you know, like when Mexico had the issues there, they pulled that, and they are very aware of what's going on, and they have people there and involved. And Mrs. Bowerman is the one who did organize the trip. It was when she was teaching French here. There are only 2 students, to my knowledge, from Fairfield going on the trip, my daughter and another individual. And Mrs. Bowerman's been using this company for a number of years. They're very reputable. And also, the other teacher that's going has worked with them for about 15 years. I really feel that at this point, things are going to be safer now than they were before because there's going to be a heightened level of security for it. That I really do wish we would, that the kids could do the trip. It's phenomenal. They are an accredited organization. They do offer, you can get a half a high school credit or a credit. They also offer that for a nominal fee. they can get college credits. You can see they're doing Paris, they're doing Normandy, they're doing the various memorials, and then they're going crossing the English Channel and doing things in London and like that. But it's all very educational. They're doing a lot of museums. They're doing they're going to Windsor Castle. So it is, you know, it's not a for fun, just a visit trip. It is educational, and they can get credits and things for it. So I would just like to, my personal feeling is I'd like my daughter to go, and I think it would be something, I don't know how tours in the past have been done, but this seems like a very good organization to do it through. So that was, I just wanted to fill folks in and like that, so.
Well, I did chaperone one time. I used to take kids. In fact, I took the spring after 9/11, took kids to France. So, and you're right, they are very much more aware. In fact, I really have to say, I think security is better in Europe than it is here, unfortunately. But and each time I've never gone, and any students, and I think Aaron, you went too. It's just a wonderful experience.
Yeah, I mean, they have a whole contract they have to sign as to their behavior. They hold the students very accountable for things like that. So I just.
Watch out for your wallets on the metro.
Well, they very much so say about.
Some issues with
Yeah,
that.
pickpocketing is
Yeah.
a big deal. When is the trip?
I'm sorry, it's April 12th through the 21st, 22nd.
Any questions?
Are we discussing this now without the discussion?
No, it's actually on the agenda.
It's on the agenda for later, but
I
I
guess
just.
we'll discuss that. Dean Thomas. Dean, are you here?
I'm here, and I just have a few disjointed comments to make. All the new school board members, and thank you for serving. Hopefully now we can get back to the business of students first. And I have 2 years for you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, bedroom, baby.
I already have a set of all of these.
Now you have another one.
Three things, Dean. Did you have anything else you wanted to share with us?
Me?
Yes.
No, that's it.
Good evening. At the November board meeting, my retirement was accepted effective this February. My entire teaching career has been with the Fairfield Area School District, and I would like to take a moment to say thank you. I started my career teaching middle school students and quickly learned that middle school is a unique place. Students are old enough to show signs of genius and inspiration, yet still young enough to switch moods by the hour. Because of that, middle school teachers are a special breed. They strive to inspire and yet find its best to just laugh at the foibles of youth. May you as a board also realize they are special. But my true love is reading, and in 2008, you allowed me to transfer to the best job in the world. As one of my, excuse me. As one of my elementary chairs once said, I have you figured out, Mrs. O'Connor. You just sell books. That boy nailed. A good librarian is basically a merchandiser of books. A good book can take you places you can never go in this temporal world, and a good book can bring you laughter and tears better than any conversation. But then I'm sure all of you already know that. The greatest joy of any librarian is to get the right books into the right hands at the right time. To do that, you must first know the treasures that lurk within each book and what emotions lurk within each child. Connecting a just right book with that just right child makes more of a difference than all of the curriculum, all of the eligible content, and all of the content standards ever written combined. My career has been a labor of love, from building a library that was in deplorable condition and rarely used, to one that has the highest circulation rates of any of the schools in this district. To paraphrase what I learned as a Girl Scout, I feel I'm leaving the campsite better than I found it. From February 2016 to the end of your school terms, the list here. Mrs. Van Meter, Mr. Murray, Mrs. Mays, Mrs. Mikesell, Mr. Whitcomb, Mrs. Gett, Mr. Barlow, Mrs. Katie, Mr. Stroller. Will you be able to say, I left the elementary library and program better than I found it? Thank you very much.
Sarah. So first of all, yay, finally. It's hard to believe we're already here where we were a year ago. This is fantastic. But there's a lot of stuff that needs done. So I would ask that you guys consider revisiting the elementary school lunch policy. I myself have not been able to make it to have lunch with my kids a single time this year because of the days, the way it's set up. And I don't have freedom just to leave work on day A's only. It doesn't work that way for me. And I know many other parents are in the same boat, and the kids are missing it. They're asking, they're feeling left out when they see their friends, parents are there, and why haven't you come at all, mommy? And that's an awful thing. So I would ask that that be revisited. Obviously, I would ask that we fill the librarian's position and not leave that position open. It's very important. I know all of you know. You all know how important the reading is for the kids, especially in elementary school. So I would ask that we do that. I also haven't seen anything more about filling the technology position that I believe is still open, that I think is of a concern. And also, I would like to see the discussion revisited about moving the 5th grade back to the elementary school. I know that it was touched on last year, but I think that a real study needs to be done, and that rather than just kind of random polling of the audience, there needs to be education done as to what the facts are, what our abilities are, and then there needs to be a plan. Obviously, the kids that are getting ready to move up next year, maybe that's not the time to do it. Maybe we should make a bigger plan to do it so that people aren't caught off guard. So that's all. Glad you're all here. Merry Christmas.
Getting very close to everybody.
You are.
But speaking of reading, how many people here think that if you or your child has 20/20 vision, that they're good to go? Anybody? Pretty much, right? That's kind of what you were taught and everything, and that is so not the case, and that's new information to me. My daughter, Peter Hesson, is in 1st grade, and she has 20/20 vision, but she is in the reading recovery program, and she is struggling very badly. And I looked and did a lot of research to try and figure out why she is struggling so badly, and went on a lot of different paths that I came to a dead end. And finally found out, actually through her reading recovery teacher, gave me some information about vision therapy for kids. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of vision therapy for kids.
But we found out through testing, a lot of testing, that Peter has convergence, insufficiency, and I don't know if I'm saying this correctly or not, but oculomotor dysfunction, which are eye tracking problems and fusional instability and eye teaming difficulties. So what she is seeing, and of course she couldn't explain this to me because she didn't know, this is what she's seen all of her life, is when she looks at words on a page, she sees blurs. And then her eyes focus, and then they don't. So it's blurry. She sees it, it's blurry. She sees it. That's one of her issues, and she has many others. The issues that she has are very significant. So we are taking her to a place that I have to drive her to 2 times a week, Monday and Wednesdays, in Mechanicsburg, for vision therapy. Now, my question is, why is it that this district doesn't know anything about that, or do they, and I just never found out about it? It's definitely something we need to look into, because I have a lot of information here, which I will not read to you, but I do have a lot of information here that's, and one of the things says 5 children with visual problems would be found in the average classroom of 25. So this is not only Peter's problem. There's a lot of kids out there that their teachers are going, I don't get it. This child is very intelligent. They can't read. I can't get them to read, or if they are reading, they're reading way below their level. Something needs to be done about this, and I actually got in touch with one of the doctors at the place that I am taking her to in Mechanicsburg, and he's willing to come to our district and talk to educate the educators about this. So hopefully we will look into that and contact me.
Thank you.
Thanks. Well, we have no committee reports from school directors. Do we have any comments that any directors want to share?
I'd like to welcome our new members aboard. Thank you guys for the time it took to get elected, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Same here, bud.
And we probably need to have a discussion about the negotiation.
Yeah, I have
because we need- Okay, I didn't know if you wanted to do it.
I have 4 things.
Okay.
I'm just giving them the opportunity
All right,
first
then I'll
before I go on my list.
Okay.
Actually, just 3 things. First off is a bus driver confronted me. No, that's not the one. Came approached me. Thanks, Greg.
You are.
Yes, we're going to be a great team.
It's my contribution.
Thanks. And the question was about children of the bus drivers riding on the buses. And I guess this is with Jacoby, who we outsource our busing. Now, Jacoby also works in Gettysburg, and I understand that they do allow, I talked to the transportation person there, because I said to this bus driver, I said, I don't have answers for this. I don't know if it's appropriate. I wouldn't want teachers bringing their children into the classroom. So I look at it kind of in that same vein, but I said I would look into it. I'm just giving you this information right now. I don't know what we will do with it, but it's up for discussion here. And I said there could be liability with this. I don't know, so I will check. Well, I found out through Gettysburg that, yes, they do allow this to happen. And the district itself is not liable, according to the superintendent there, because they contract out for busing services. And I guess there's a problem here when the one bus driver's child is off of school. So they then would not be able to drive the bus because their child isn't, unless they brought their child on the bus. So I'd like to hear what you might think concerning this situation. Now, I know Melissa drives the bus on occasion, and she did have her grandchild on the bus.
Yeah, whenever I drove. If they needed a sub, that was my only way to sub. When she needed to be with me or I couldn't sub for her. So typically she came. Now she goes to school here now, so she doesn't, ride anymore. But, and
So
I
we've
know
already been doing that, but that was with Jacobs,
that
right?
was, yeah,
Well, it doesn't matter, but, because we,
right.
I did the same thing. The district will have the liability, it would depend on the contract language.
Well, it sounds more as if it's an issue between, who we're contracting with Jacoby and their employees. So it would be between them.
except
They don't have a problem with it.
they don't have a problem with it. Our district has said to them, no. So
Might not be liability for the child, but what if one of Fairfield students does something that hurts that child? They're under Fairfield's, whenever we give our child to the bus driver, Fairfield's responsible for it. If they do something to the bus driver's child, is that still on the bus company, or is that not? It's two ways.
I don't have that answer. I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I don't know.
There's liability unless it's transferred to treasury.
So we have to look at the contract then?
Someone.
I'll just speak to this because I think I'm the one that you're talking about that kind of put the kibosh on this. I do know Gettysburg allows it. I don't think it's a good practice, and I think that when you talk to the insurance companies and you ask who's liable, it starts to get very ambiguous. And I don't feel that I can put the district in that position to wait till the end to find out that some of the culpability does come back on us. Some of the other issues that came up were very, very young children on these buses without seatbelts, with older students. What if the driver gets distracted? She's being paid to take our students to school, and I have concerns that she gets distracted with her young child. It's not just, you can't say, well, yes, you can take your child provided they're the age of, 7 to 15. Where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the exceptions? So I'll be honest, I'm the one that said, no, period.
Were you aware that this has been done though in our district before?
I'm aware that there's a lot of things that were done before, and when I had the opportunity to change them and put what I felt were safer practices in place, I did.
I agree. I think it is safer.
And we can compare ourselves to other districts. I typically don't. I kind of look back and say, maybe what's the safest for us and our students. Now, we do have those occasions where it's a virtual emergency, the child is, and we have done that once in a blue moon, and the child is typically much older. But no, it's not our practice, and that was a directive from us to Jacoby.
But how would you address that when you have students, you have drivers that are driving for the school district and their kids go to the school district, and they're driving their kids on the bus with them, versus another driver from another area, then you're going to be showing it could be perceived that you're being prejudiced. And you open yourself up to a suit.
But if that bus driver is driving that route and their child just happens to live there, I mean.
That's not done, that's for myself. I can tell you for myself, my kids came to Fairfield. I drove for Fairfield. My one kid's in one grade, one's in another grade, they're going to come at different times. So I'm not going to run home and grab the one, bring them to school or high school, and run and grab the other and bring them back. They're both getting at the same time, getting the bus at the same time. So I had when I did the elementary run, my kids were on the elementary run, even though they were high schoolers.
I guess that was before my issue with that, and probably requested that it not happen. And it's at the board's discretion, it's just a decision I made at the beginning of this year when Jacoby took over, but.
Is it in his contract?
I mean, we didn't get to that level of minutia in the contract. I mean, the contract could get substantially large. It's just something that we sat down, we started having some issues with people wanting to bring very small children. We just said, no, this can't happen.
What about your vans? I mean, you got many vans out there. I mean, any issues with the kids riding vans, with the parents or whoever's driving the van?
I think it
That's
is
the
an
same
issue.
thing.
When you have very young children in a van, it's not a bus, they need to be in a booster seat or a car seat or.
Yeah, they are.
I mean, it kind of seems to me that this particular issue is even cheaper probably proposed by the many ones such for school districts.
They have seats.
So I'm gonna say, my own opinion is we would look at other school districts and see what if they even have a policy. And typically we follow suit of other school districts if that's what's going on there. But if we're gonna set the precedence or something like that, then we're gonna also eliminate some of our drivers. And then the pool just shrunk for our drivers, especially if they know that they can take their kids with them if they're on the school run.
Well, maybe this can be discussed at another time. Well, at this point, we haven't had problems getting subbed bus drivers.
I think they do have issues with it, that was her issue, was she's gonna have to get a sub. And I guess it's frequent, it's not, can we look at it on a case-by-case basis, like if he's, I don't know who the child is, but I think he's in school, because I think it
Well, it
has.
sounded like it was a school-age child because it's when they're not in session, she doesn't know what to do with her child.
Right.
At that point.
And I
So
don't
it's not
know,
a
like, the
little
frequency of it, or I don't know any of that stuff, but,
I think it's one thing if they go to school here, and depending on their age, but if they don't, they're not even a
I don't think it's a
district
resident,
student.
no.
No, she's
no,
not from the area.
no.
A lot of the drivers this year aren't, you know, they're.
Yeah, because, however, on the other hand, I do want to say that teachers from the elementary school, whoever has bus duty, are very thrilled with Jacoby. Those buses are there on time, they've had no incidences, everything is running very smoothly. I guess you concur with that too?
Arrival time is perfect, once in a while a dismissal, but nothing you can't handle.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say something positive.
When we had the van for a short time at the end of last school year, the driver would bring a child sometimes. And whatever. But my concern, I had a concern there and I just was leaving it alone because I was really thankful for the van. And the bus driver was fantastic and we loved her too. So, but my concern there had been, I knew we were really limited on seating. And I know that some of these buses that we currently have now are also the limit on their overcrowdedness. And so that's just another thing I would take into consideration. I'm not saying I feel one way or the other on it, but I know that van specifically last year, we had kids that were getting turned away and having to ride the bus instead of the van. And
Well, during their district children come first, prior to anybody's own children.
Yes, I just want to, and this is just my opinion.
I was hoping it was yours and not yours.
When my children were younger, now my youngest is now in middle school, so I don't need before and after school care. But I had to make arrangements for childcare before, after school, and when school was out. And I personally, I'm sorry, they're an employee. If their child doesn't have school, they, as the parent, need to make other arrangements, friends, family, daycare, whatever. I just think it's too much of a risk. Again, it can be a distraction for the bus driver trying to drive a large vehicle with a large number of our children, and their child may act out in one way or another, distract them for a blink of an eye, and you've got 50 kids that are now possibly in a ditch on the side of the road.
Good point, good point.
Christine, you said that you made the decision not to allow that to continue. What are the repercussions of that?
You know, I had one or two people that questioned me or had some concerns, but, and I know somebody said you look at it case by case, and that sounds good until you're sitting there trying to say, okay, why would I say yes to you? And no, it's very difficult. So I kind of err on that way I'm fair, I'm firm, fair, and consistent, nobody, you know?
That's true.
It's a really tough call. I understand their problem. I also don't feel that I can
Don't we have a
bring that
director of
on to the district.
transportation?
Pardon me?
Don't we have a director of transportation anymore? Wouldn't that be their decision?
I'm actually her supervisor, so that's
There you have
where
it.
that came from.
Well, see, this thing, because I can tell you, even like field trips and stuff like that, some of the bus drivers, when they go to basketball games, football games, stuff like that, they take their child along to the games. So now you're gonna eliminate all of that too.
Well, yeah, right.
Even though they go to school here,
Right, we wouldn't be allowed.
they don't go down on the team, and I forgot.
Is this something that we can make a policy around, or it just kind of seems to me like there's a lot of discussion happening in the group, but maybe we need to like set aside a time to make a decision about that if it needs to be done in the meeting.
I don't know that you should.
I think I'd like to make a motion that we ask Ms. Deeds to review the contract to make sure we're not violating the contract, and then to check with our solicitor for any advice she might have, and then we'll reconvene, we'll talk
It's
about
not
it.
in there. There's nothing in the contract relative to this particular subject. It's not addressed at all.
I'm suggesting we check with our solicitor, and then discuss it at the next meeting.
If it's not in the contract, then we would be liable. I mean, if they're not taking money.
I don't think that's what she meant. I think she meant that it's not, there's nothing in the contract that
It's not
says that
restricted.
they can or can't bring kids on the bus.
The other thing I want to bring up is the tech person that Sarah just alluded to, and the fact that we've now gone quite a long time. And the board, prior to you, had asked Karen to look at outsourcing or hiring or what we were going to do. And I don't know if you're ready to share with this board yet, but I do think we need to get, I know I couldn't get in my email over the weekend. So I think we need to look at that sooner than later.
Actually get something later on in the meeting on that. You'll get something later on tonight.
Oh, okay, okay. All right, then the other thing, we need to appoint a negotiations committee because we will be negotiating teacher contracts in January. So Marcy has led the negotiations team the last 2 times. So I'm hoping she will continue to. So now we need 2 other people. I know that a couple of you went to the mediation workshop, right? You were there.
Yes, I was there.
Would you be willing to sit on that team?
Whenever I can do that.
With Marcy? And
It's fun.
Becky.
I've been in a few of them, it's good.
I need one other person to agree to be on that. Okay, so we've got our team. We only need 3, right? So we have our team.
We will be meeting soon.
Okay.
Moving to the consent agenda, does anyone want any hold to the consent agenda?
I just had a quick question about that.
Well, I want to pull that, so you can
Okay.
ask the question.
Good.
Other than F, does anybody want any items pulled?
Can I ask a quick question about G? I know you can't talk about individual people directly, but the trend of losing coaches, so rapidly, concerned about that?
In these particular cases, the ones that I have lost, were due to issues none of them are due with issues here. They're all more of a personal, family, job
Individual
related.
reasons,
Yes,
not trend.
correct.
That's all.
Okay, other than F, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Kelby seconded. Oh,
Seconded.
Mr. Barlow.
Yes.
Mr. Murray.
Yes.
Mrs. Paquette.
Yes.
Mr. Wickham. Mr. Stroller.
Yes.
Mrs. Mays. Mrs. Meichel.
Yes.
Mrs. Van Meter. Mrs. King.
Yes.
In pulling out, here's my concern, and I didn't see you beforehand, or I would have asked you. Back in November 9th, we granted permission to advertise for hire of an elementary librarian for the remainder of the school year. Now, on this, we are saying that substitute. So I'm not sure if that's appropriate. Should we be hiring a librarian?
I don't know the circumstances of who applied, and I don't know the circumstances of that.
Nobody's applied yet.
We didn't know. It was, and I don't have the November 9th agenda.
It's right here.
Sarah.
Look at that.
I can see in the
See. And here's my concern, because I think Mr. Miller tried to do this the one time.
Yeah, no, this is strictly the fact that when we talked about it originally, it was to put somebody in for the remainder of the year, to see whether or not that position, where we were going with that position. But since it's been approved, then this, you're right, this shouldn't even be here, and we should advertise it.
Okay,
So-
well, but we can start to advertise it.
We can,
After we do the motion.
Right.
Okay. Because I don't think we can do a substitute anyway for a, because I looked that up on PDE's website there. And it says that you have to have, since we're not doing away with the position, we have to hire a certified person, not a substitute. So, what do you all?
That my question, that's what I was gonna ask, if we had.
Well,
said
and I do think it's
advertise.
a null point, because, like I said, you've already approved, it was already approved at the last meeting, so we will advertise and go forward.
Because we have 2 months, I think, so we should see if we can find somebody.
Just don't
For a
vote.
library. Or
Correct.
not a substitute. Okay. All right.
So it's moved.
No, it's already been approved in the last.
Yeah, on November 9th, so we
So
don't
we're just gonna
even,
remove
we
this language.
can just strike this, right?
So they have to.
It doesn't really matter. I mean, if you don't take action to approve it, it's not approved, it was approved last time.
Okay. Now, all right, so we're done, so we don't need to vote on that, but, so then on other discussion items, I just want to thank Mr. Shutt for his letter that he just gave to the board members and in their support for this board and your decisions that they're going to make. We appreciate it. Very nice. Shutt. Does she want to help him?
I have one.
Now, the other discussion item left is the student trip to France.
I have one or two other items.
Okay, I have one more thing too I want to share
The
too. before we go.
reason the French trip is on there is because the previous board did indeed vote, because it's out of the country, did vote to allow them to go on the trip. First, needless to say, the world events caused us to at least bring it forward to this board for discussion. I know Mr. McDowell had been in contact with the teacher and whether or not this company was going to refund the money and discontinue it. Their comment, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, was that at that time, when Brian and I originally talked, was there was no travel advisory from the government. That has since changed too. Is there an update, Brian, that you're aware of? Because
There's not update.
Well, it's not until, it's not for several months. And I think, you know, if the state says, you know, people should not travel in different countries, then we will take that into consideration. I don't think we should stop planning. But you know.
I would say it's up to the family, but as a parent, I think that's kind of your call. I mean, I think it's, you know, I think it's your parents, because we have huge students going, I think it's up to the parents to make that decision for the child.
And Brooke, here's a question for you. I agree that it's a parent decision, but as a sanctioned board that we sanctioned, that this trip was sanctioned, does that put any liability back on the district if something unforeseen would happen, knowing what we know about the world events at this moment?
It's I don't know anything about the trip. Is it a co-curricular trip, like it's a requirement of the French class?
It is not required,
Is it run by the district?
not by our district, no.
How is it organized or coordinated?
Right?
Last year when we had French, we partnered with Upper Adams, and the French teacher was shared between two districts. That French teacher is taking the students.
She's no longer here, because we no longer offer French.
Okay, so she just contacted the Fairfield School District.
Last year when she was here, she organized the trip.
The kids have been planning for the trip since last year,
As part of her duties as a teacher here.
at that time.
Correct.
And joint with with Bakerville, they are still going, their
Just don't
students
receive
are.
any credit for going. It's completely independent of the school now. I mean, there's some separation there. I mean, it's not to say people can sue for any reason at any time. There are layers of removal there. I think you take into advisement what the recommendations are at the time, within a month or so when the trip is, and you have insurance. There's no definitive legal answer on that, but it doesn't sound like it's sanctioned by the school, other than it's an opportunity being made available to your students or something that you were coordinating, sponsoring, and organizing. I'd be even more worried. But I do think it's probably a parent situation. But if there is any organization taking place in school, like you're doing fundraisers here, or there is a teacher in charge, and students are, that would change my.
And that may have been the reason why it came to the board to begin with, because at that time, the teacher was here.
Right.
And,
And we've done trips.
correct.
Yep.
It was reported that the two kids that were signed up for the trip now, are sign-ups closed, or are they still open? Could there be more kids going on the trip, or is that it? Just
No,
two
there's
kids?
two from Fairfield, and I'm not sure of
Yeah,
the number
they've already
from
paid. The
Bakerville.
kids are going, have already paid.
Yeah, we've been paying since back in February.
The board approved the trip originally because it was.
She was a teacher.
She was a teacher here, and it was part of the French class.
But this current trip is not.
It's
part
the
of
same
it.
trip,
It's-
that's the
it's the
problem.
same
teachers
trip,
don't-
but it
That's why I'm
was-
asking the question, that's why I brought it up.
When she was here as a teacher.
But they're not getting credit for it because she left, and French is gone.
Correct.
They wouldn't have gotten credit for it anyway. They did it.
It does make it a little bit closer to home. I mean, it makes it a little bit more yours. I don't think there's a definitive legal answer, but it sounds like it's a slightly school sponsored, or it was at one point, and
It was at one
some
point.
official action.
Correct.
I don't know if you ever had a contract, but you could take an action to say it's not a school sponsored trip any longer, and it is independent of the school, and that might provide an additional layer of legal protection. When is this trip?
April.
April.
So we can put this on the next agenda as we cast off the French
Well, my
to
concern
their own.
is that it's classified as a field trip, then it's an that they're covered and excused for the school days.
Oh, sure.
My concern is if you remove that, then it's no longer.
Oh, no, it can still be an
Yeah. It could
education.
be an educational trip, but not be school sponsored. It's
But
definitely.
it's outside the 5 days of an education
Yeah.
trip of our
It's-
policy.
it's like
So
10
the first
days.
5, that's the problem. Those 5 days would have been legal. After that,
But I suppose under the exceptions that you can provide for pre-approved trip that students signed up for it, I mean, from time to time, administrators give leeway to that depending on
Correct.
the trip, and it's a matter of whether you enforce truancy against the students, and an extra 5 days out probably wouldn't qualify them for truancy unless they have other absences. I think there's some leeway there, if need be. So you can put on the agenda as no longer being sponsored by the school for the next meeting.
2 students that would have the parents of school district.
Yeah, they won't have a problem doing that as long as they're excused days, that's all.
Yes.
That'd be, yeah. You can just confirm it as a letter here.
I have one more thing. I have one more thing. Deb Frenchbaugh, who many of you know, was the librarian at our high school for years and years, contacted me and asked that I say something about Robert Reynolds. He died just recently. He was 98, and he was a teacher here in Fairfield for 14 years. He pursued his lifetime goal of earning a teaching degree from Shippensburg, and for 14 years, it says in his obituary, he lovingly taught civics, history, and economics with the Fairfield School District, and he was referred to as Pappy Reynolds. He had an encyclopedic mind for history and people. He was never without a notebook and fountain pen to record pertinent information about the people he met and places he visited. And the thing that was that she wanted everyone to know was that he sponsored the essay contest for years, giving thousands of dollars to students in this district. So I said I would share that, and I appreciate it. I did not know him myself. Many of you did. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Oh, Marcy Adams, so that tells us. So. Oh, well, I know, I think that was wonderful. He was 98.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I meant it's just the fact that Marcy had it.
Anybody else have anything? She's just a young thing.
Yeah. I have a couple things to go. Go ahead. You go.
Question for Karen. I know we've been studying the playground that we're trying to get repaired. Do we have a cost associated
We
with that?
do, and that's what I was going to give you the
What are they?
information on.
Can we approve that getting started?
Well, it'll have to, I guess you can make it an action or an amendment that we have to Brooke. Actually, we do know, and to make the playground usable again, it would be about $6,200 for the materials and $2,000 for the mulch. So we're talking about $8,200.
I'll make a motion.
And that would, again, reopen the playground.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
I'll make an amendment.
No, and the mulch is already in the current year's budget, so that would be, that's a non-issue.
Mickey's already making a motion.
I'll make a motion that we make an amendment to the agenda to vote on taking this action and approving it to go forward with it. The money to open the playground back up.
Mommy, did you second?
I'd almost second. I'd just like to make sure that you look at what's the view.
I have.
Playground safe.
And how I can explain to you the changes that, he's worked with Bob Dow to fill in where, there's not a nice way to say this, but where a child could fall through and not really be hung by their head. So, there are ways to fix that. He is able to fix monkey bars and make some movements on things in order to increase the swing zone so that is within regulations.
I've read the changes and I think that they're appropriate, so I would second Mickey's motion.
Okay, since now you've just added this to the agenda, we have to bring it back to the public for any public comments. Since we're adding it to the agenda, anyone want to make Sarah, I know what you're gonna say, thank you, or hooray, or whatever.
Well, I'm gonna say that, but I'm also gonna say that playground still stinks. And that, I mean,
What did you say?
it stinks.
You mean smell?
No, I mean, it's miserable.
I wouldn't say we're finished with it.
Right, and that's just what I wanted to say. I mean, thank you very much, Karen, for getting the inspections done. I would also like to see the board make some kind of a policy as far as on how frequent the playgrounds have to be inspected by an outside inspector. I think that should be the daily basis prior to the start of school would make sense to me. So I'd like to see that. Huh? Yeah, I'd like to see that happen, but I also want it to be on the board's mind, and I know it is, that playground is pretty miserable. So it's great that we're fixing it, but I'm sure that what we're gonna get for $6,200 or $8,200 is not gonna make that playground
Well,
anymore
let's get started here.
fun.
Sarah,
Right, no, I agree. I just wanna make sure that we
Let's
don't,
reopen it so that the
Right.
kids have another place.
right, no, and that's great, and that's
Yeah,
fantastic.
we do need to look at that.
Yep.
We do need to.
I'm gonna go ahead and write it. If we would spend that $6,200 and make it reusable, is that gonna waste money then if we turn around and decide to replace it or refurbish it somehow? Is there a way to make sure that that money doesn't get essentially wasted by moving these there?
The best I can answer you, Kelly, is that will come down to the committee at the playground at that time. You know, depending on, you know, the changes that we can make and, you know, is this, depending on what would want to be added or changed or how we're going to do that. I know we've talked in the past and the committee has talked about the fact that instead of adding to that playground, we will add to what you all think of as the new playground and continue to add to that instead.
So what's the 6,200, like, what are we doing?
So, I don't know what you call it, wooden bridge, the chains will be tightened up on that, some places, help me, Howie, here, the one,
You have to remove the set of steps that go up to that wooden bridge, and put it on the opposite side, so that we have enough clearance to keep, maintain the swings, because that's one of the issues that was in the inspection, not enough clearance there. By tightening up that bridge, you shorten up that space in there that the child could fall through. The horizontal ladder would be removed and one put up that would be up to code. The first bar that a child would reach for, and that was too close to the platform, so you would fall down there and actually hit the head of the platform. So you're supposed to have to reach out for that. There's no way to correct what is there without losing the structural integrity, so we replace it. The wooden decks that are there, they're getting pretty bad. The metal coated, rubber coated metal deck. We have a filler in there that what you would call an climbing structure on the back side of it. It's kind of an arch climber. Again, at the very top, the space is too great. The child could fall through the deck and hung on their head. I know it sounds horrible, but that's the way they measure this stuff. And that was before the codes were obviously different. One thing that was not mentioned, I just mentioned to Carolyn on the way in here, and I apologize, think about it, so I don't have all this. This was a verbal quote on the phone. I'm gonna have everything detailed tomorrow. But I forgot about the excavation. I've got to excavate that distance, get a patch of grass behind the swings over to the sidewalk. That should be excavated and mulch put in that, so it's gonna be a few extra $100 in there for that. I don't think I missed anything. It's gonna be fine where we're at.
Well, I think I put that money in it. I hope it's something that, you know, we're gonna use. We can always add on, you know, to that, but I would hope we're not just doing something and we tear it out and just tear it down.
well, we're not gonna, it won't be torn out once it's, once the upwards.
My question would go to the building principal, is that playground of value? Do you find that your scheduling of playtime on the single playground that you're currently using this year, do you find it's gonna be valuable to spend $6,200, $8,200 on this other playground?
At this time, all classrooms are scheduled to use the larger playground. It just limits their flexibility as to when they wanted to take them out. They're all given a set time. So if a teacher wanted to take them out for an additional recess or because something in the classroom went beyond their recess time, they're stuck. So it gives them the opportunity to have an option. But these classes that only use that playground are kindergarten and first grade. Second, third, and fourth always use the larger playground.
So is that value to you then to have that extra playground?
I've talked to a lot of teachers who've been there during playground recess. They love that extra, they love that thing. It's very convenient, it's right there, there's the door at the kindergarten side, you go right out. They're there playing on the playground within 3-4 minutes after they leave the door.
And those little ones need that.
Yeah, I think so too, I think.
That would take the younger students off the larger playground one additional time a day. So they would have one playtime at the little playground and one time at the larger playground.
What a win-win. I'm looking at the win-win.
They love rolling down that hill.
Well, we don't need to fix the playground.
Cardboard box, they'll love it. Cardboard box.
Anything else, any,
Any other public comments?
oh, yeah, I'm sorry, John.
I have one comment. Is there any current plan to replace that? I mean, if we're talking about the being in usable situation for another 5 years, and I think it makes sense to update it and repair it now. Is it a plan to be replaced a year or 2 years from now? And I would question that.
I don't think there's a plan to replace it in the next, but that wasn't one of our 5-year things, you know. Not that it couldn't happen, but there's been no plan to do that.
However, I do need to share with you if, our elementary PTO is currently regenerating the funds to either add to the larger playground or to purchase a structure to replace the smaller. Now, that has not come to the superintendent, but she is aware that the PTO has started fundraising again to do something for the playground.
I don't know where they are with that fundraising.
Pardon? We're starting from scratch because last year they turned over 35,000 for the project. And so right now our balance is low and we're starting to rebuild. But just so you
However,
know.
no percentage has to go to that company this year, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so all that money that's coming in is
And
gonna
that's
be.
not the only fundraiser that's
The
going.
Race for Education isn't the only thing, if that's what you're talking about, the Race for Education.
Is that what I'm talking about?
Yes.
The majority of their
They have,
fundraising this year is going.
they have a variety of fundraisers that they're starting to save in accounts.
I have to say, my understanding, and maybe I got really confused, was that back at this time last year, I really thought that I saw drawings that were obtained to replace the kindergarten first grade
Up on the
playground.
wall, here in the boardroom.
Yes,
They were just the drawings for the new playground, the different options.
and I thought there were
Is that what it
ones,
was?
Yeah, there's never been
I
we've
thought-
never done a drawing.
I-
A little.
I thought there were ones at the elementary school too, up on a easel. So anyways, I do know the PTO is looking at that.
Must do both.
I thought that was an option, was to do both.
Those of you working with PTO that didn't, is that, did you ever talk about
I don't
that?
remember that ever being.
I would think that maybe it's worth talking to the PTO to find out officially what their intention are in fundraising, because $6,200 or $8,200 could go a long way. I can't imagine that that playground will be near as costly to replace as the big one was with a new play structure. So if there's a potential that with the community's effort and maybe some money from the board and that dollar amount, we could have an entire new play structure put in the spring, summer. Might be better
Right.
served.
But even if you do get a new structure, you still have to fix the structures that are there.
Yes.
No,
Right.
not if you tear out, not if you tear out the old one.
You're not gonna be able to reopen that anytime soon then, if you're not gonna put the $6,200.
I agree, I think it should be done immediately.
Okay, well, we have a motion and we have a second. Anybody else want to put in their 2 cents there? Okay, well then I'll call it vote then.
Mr. Barlow.
Yes.
Mr. Murray.
Yes.
Mrs. Paquette.
Yes.
Mr. Wickham.
Yes.
Mr. Strawler.
Yes.
Mrs. Mays. Mrs. Meixel.
Yes.
Mrs. Van Meter. Mrs. Cavey.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Keep using that playground as we, anyway.
You have anything else to make?
Man, I have something I'd like to, it's just a question more or less to Karen. It's where we're at on the property, the abandoned property as far as the rental.
Oh, good, thank you.
It's on my list of things, always get to me. The board had directed me to create a rubric and to review the applications. I actually had Caroline and Howie, the three of us sat down with the rubric, reviewed the applications. We have 2 finalists that, will be credit check done, and then on the credit check, I will have a name and.
Okay. I want to say this about renting the property, because I know we had talked. I hope we don't put someone in there and then turn right around and sell it on them. You know, I hope we look at, maybe a long-term rental to begin with, but I just, you know, unless they know right up front.
They know up front because the lease agreement was part of the application, so they know that the district may consider to sell it, in which case they would have 60 days to vacate. So that's not, you know, I didn't try to hide anything from anybody. I wanted them to know, and I said it is the pleasure of the board. So,
I thought I just read something that said it was gonna be extended, like the sale of the property or.
No, we took it off the market.
Yes, we took it off the
We took it
market.
off the market. There was some little things going on.
Oh, okay, I don't know, I thought I just read something that said it was gonna be.
It was taken off the market because the actual contract was up, the date was up. And then we said that we would leave it to the board, then actually it was up to the new board to make a determination in the future, whatever it is.
Well, we're not gonna rush.
So right
into
now,
it.
it's not up for sale.
It is not.
Okay.
There was an agenda item to extend it, but they decided not to.
That must be what I thought, okay.
And we could also really, not that we're in the real estate business, but we could also discuss an option to buy with the renters giving them the option to buy. Possibly.
What I'm going to give you all, and it will become part of the discussion at our next board meeting, are the current job description for the technology position and one that I've rewritten. To me, that is a lot tighter than what this says.
Is that one, the one you sent me, the one in your left hand, is that what you sent me?
This is the current, this is what is currently ours, yes.
Okay, that's what you're changing.
That's my recommendation, yes. I also, at our next meeting, we'll be discussing the options of outsourcing over hiring somebody in-house. Right now, I'm going to tell you that I will lean towards hiring our own, just over the sheer cost. Outsourcing, whatever, didn't matter what company I've spoken to, they've come in, they've done some preliminary evaluations, and they all come back with, you need at least 2 people, if not 3, 4 people of ours. And, you know, for 6 months, you know, it'll be $78,000. And I went, oh, okay, thank you very much. No, it's not, but, you know, and so I think we need to have a discussion on, and you need, and some of this will be done in executive session because you need to know some things that I'm aware of that are personnel issues. That need to be, you would need to have.
I'm not a big fan of outsourcing.
So that will be coming forward. In the next meeting.
No way.
I have one other thing. I'm just gonna, this is strictly to and pass them on. These are the new evaluations for head coaches and assistant coaches. This is strictly informational for your information. I worked with Crystal to develop a new format to evaluate coaches and a new process. So that is what you have just for your information.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does that include the athletic director to evaluate her?
So I take care of my staff. I will evaluate them. Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate that. And that's all I have.
There's 2 things here that we're to take.
Yeah, there's, one should say head coach, one should say assistant coach.
Elimination back on index.
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah, you can set that. Yeah. The new, I'm just gonna give you, some of you have. Yeah, just so. But I want to get, just want to get that.
Anything else? Anybody would like to bring up?
Well, yes, since we don't have committees, one of the things I'd like for our working group to task accomplish first is to take a look at school safety. and to work with Karen, put together a safety committee, and might involve public, local law enforcement, and some education for our working group.
Mayor Stanley.
Okay, so that could be done on the 11th of January, because that will be the
And I
first.
will, yeah, I'm working with Pam to develop that agenda. And some of that safety, you'll have to understand, we have been meeting with law enforcement, we have been meeting with,
You did some this summer, right?
well, and we've done some since then, like we met with Mount St. Mary's recently as an evacuation point, because we now know that FEMA is not an option. They can't handle our size. So actually, Mount St. Mary's is now in the process of making sure that they can accommodate, because their concern is if there was a major catastrophe, besides just a school thing, if there was a major catastrophe, that people need to be, more than one district had to be relocated. They have commitments to other school districts, so could they actually handle all the different districts? So they're actually looking at what they can really offer us, and they will get back to us.
I'd like to find a way for the board to be a little more involved in that process. That's one of my goals.
Well, and the goal was to move it out to a larger group, but to try and get at least stipulate so we could get things going without a lot of, because, when it came time to, where are we gonna relocate to? We brainstormed and, we went right down the list, Site R wasn't an option. FEMA wasn't an option. Well, we truly looked at things that we could get to. Gettysburg College, is that an option? But it's such a hike. And how do we get them there? Because let's be honest, the only road we have really that will be shut off is 116.
In Gettysburg College, we can take you to Gettysburg.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you
So
think
that's-
about Fort,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Fort Ritchie?
Actually, that was, came to me, I thought about that the other day. I wondered if that was an option. And I was really, to be honest with you, thinking, I was trying to find someone, a contact person there, because the person that I knew used to oversee that isn't there anymore.
I thought Penmore Leasing was still there.
Penmore Realty does,
Yeah. Penmore Realty?
but they just lease the apartment buildings. There's a lot of different.
Oh, yeah, they have,
organizations
so they
that
have released the barracks and all the things in the back.
And some of that money.
Some of us.
Well, it may not be usable.
Oh, it's Washington County, Maryland.
Yeah,
Washington County, Maryland.
Yeah.
I'm in,
I would start out with Penmore, could at least direct you to the right place you have to contact.
The location is a small part of the issue.
Well, I know,
Yes.
we're working, we actually have started, Howie actually went to training, and we do have a committee, we tried to break down what are the different segments of the safety plan, because we know we have to get one in place. And who needs to be on those different committees, and what do we need to look at? So that's really what we're trying to do right now as an administration, so that we aren't wasting a group of people's time, because we're still trying to figure out what all we need to accomplish.
Anybody else?
I'd like to revisit what Sarah's talking about the school lunch program.
Oh.
Revisit that, because I'm in a lunch and I see how those kids are just tickled to death and see their parents and grandparents. They tell me, especially if they have an older, kindergarten has an older brother or sister in class, they're just excited to say, Nana's coming in for lunch and that kind of stuff. I know, like I said, because I'm there a lot, I see a lot of what's going on. I know that it would really, I think the parents would really appreciate that if we could do something about that.
Well, I have to say too, I feel that way. I think that it should be just like it was last year. If it's that big a problem, then we shouldn't have it open at all.
Correct.
And I don't think there's that, I don't think that we had one incident last year, and I really think we had no rules up there. Parents didn't know they weren't to go back to the classroom, walk back with their child to the classroom. I think they would follow the rules if they knew the rules. So I
But I'm going to ask this board to direct the administration to come back with recommendations, because that really is a administrative position and is not, that really is not, that's a day-to-day function, and that's really not the function of the board. So if you want to direct the administration to come back to you with further recommendations, I have no issue with that.
Well, I think that's what we're saying. Or, I don't know, do you want to, hands, does that, people want that to
This is not
happen?
gonna be a popular opinion, but, I mean, as a parent in the elementary school, I understand, like, I get frustrated with it too, because I would love to go have lunch with my child if I wanted to. But at the same time, I'm not the principal in that school, I'm not the superintendent, and I don't know what issues happen to cause that to be necessary. And I feel like those kind of things, maybe as a school board, are not our called to. And I feel like the principal and the superintendent.
Well, they did make.
Right, but that's what I'm saying.
Like I said, if the board wants us to relook at that, we will gladly do it. We'll come back and we will.
Well, I'm only
I
one
know that
person,
we've
I'd
talked-
like you to relook at it.
Okay. Like I said, I know that some teachers on a committee that I sit on have expressed that they like the lack of interruption in their day, but again, we'll go back to the teachers again too and get their opinion as a group.
Sorry, even if it was Mondays, Fridays, or just, something that, because that's when most people have off work, that, school luncheon session that they can come in or something, I don't know. I kind of agree with both sides.
Something more consistent,
Yeah.
I think, is what you're saying, where, this day one can be on a Wednesday this week, then it's on a Tuesday, then it's on, it's really difficult unless you get the calendar. And I don't get access.
I think for groups.
It does, because I don't get a calendar.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say that I know that Mrs. Rickline recommended it this way. She did it because she thought that way the day would alternate, so that if, as a parent, your day off was Thursdays.
Right.
Every 6 days, it would get to a Thursday.
And I don't have a problem with the administration looking at it again, because like she said, you had a reason. But I'll tell you, this is long ago, but when my other daughter was in middle school, you could go to lunch in middle school. We had one parent that ruined it, and we couldn't go any longer. You could sit in the conference room. So I don't know what happened at the elementary school, but I think the one parent who ruined it should lose the privileges. Who can't follow the rules. You don't leave the cafeteria, you don't do this, and I know my one friend over here would say, not at all. But anyhow, I think if it's a little more flexible, because like Erica will call and say, oh, you go to lunch tomorrow, or she'll forget, and I'll say, when did we go to lunch now, and so maybe I should get my own calendar, but, would just be, hold those parents accountable, don't ruin it for everybody, because there's parents who,
Yeah,
so.
I liken it as a classroom teacher, and because April messes up, I'm now gonna punish them all. That just doesn't seem fair to me, And I know, I was right there.
We were never, I was never given any rules. My daughter was never given any rules.
We don't know.
I would follow the rules.
I
may
That's
be
the-
one of the rule
I would, but you know what I'm saying? You gotta tell us what we're supposed to can and cannot do, that's not fair. I mean, did
Well,
you
it
ever
probably
any
needs to be
rules?
written, something that's said.
They are
and
now,
written.
they're up, they
Well,
finally
but
got
that's
the
what I was
sign.
saying.
Oh,
My
yeah.
husband just went.
Oh, those
And
two,
my
but I
husband
mean, I
made
never
a
had
picture
any
of my
trouble.
daughter that he took at lunch, and I said,
Did you?
oh, you guys have yourself.
Yeah, that's one of the rules.
Right, but he didn't. take
I
time.
know.
This is the.
So it makes sense.
Oh, okay.
Makes-
What?
We all done.
Yeah.
There were two.
Yeah, what do we have to do? Do we have to make a motion or what do we-
This?
No, I mean, for the-
Wow, that's really nice.
Okay. Do we need- you don't need a
For
motion?
hand-picked candidates. You make them.
Yeah, it's really emotional.
In here. And as for professional, looking good.
Your first day of work was wonderful too.
Look in the mirror. Nothing but wrong. And nothing about students.
Have a good night. Have a good night. Thanks for coming.
Take a roll call. Take a roll call. Thank you, Doc.
I'm surprised he didn't. Is he staying?
I don't know, I'm gonna go see, he took off, didn't he?
Oh, he. Are we off?